The very first time you Dockerize, publish to Docker Hub, and cloud deploy can be a bit overwhelming. There are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of concepts to get under your belt. And so with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and do a replay of what we did in class. As you can see here, I have a different arrangement on the screen. The top two terminals are going to be permanent. One of them is going to be used for the local environment. The blue one is going to be used for the cloud environment. You can think of that as DigitalOcean Blue. I also have an editor that I will keep open to do any of the necessary edits that we have. And on the lower left hand side, I'm going to keep the slides and any windows that I need to open within a browser. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get going. We're going to be using, as we did, npm node, Docker, Docker Hub, DigitalOcean, GitHub, and a virtual machine on the cloud. We're going to be looking at 4 architectures. The very first one is creating a node application with an npm package locally. Once we get that up and running, we will do the same thing on the cloud using a virtual machine that has the necessary packages and node installations to be able to do that, and that's an image that will be readily available for us. We will then take all of that and wrap it into a container. The advantage of a container being that it can be deployed anywhere as long as it can run Docker containers, and that of course is all the clouds. Now, once we've done that in the local environment on that third architecture, we will then go to the cloud, run a new virtual machine that knows how to run Docker containers. We will then pull from Docker Hub, and we will run our node and npm application. So we will get started by creating a repository, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the class site for GitHub, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and call it for architectures, and then I'm going to go ahead and give it a description, and I'm going to go ahead and say use for arcs, and I'm going to go ahead and make it public. I'll add a readme, a getignore to be able to avoid replicating all those files that can be done by using simply npm install. I'll choose a license. The license will be MIT license. And I'm going to go ahead and create the repository. Now, once that's up and visible, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and open this momentarily a little bit bigger. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the link that I need to be able to clone that to my local environment. So I'm going to go ahead and use the SSH link. Going to go ahead and copy that. I'll go ahead and close, and then here in my local environment on my local machine, I'm going to go ahead and move to my desktop. Then inside of it I have a folder called samples, and in here I'm going to go ahead and clone that repository. So I've pasted that address there. I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and if I look at I'm going to go ahead and list them. An easier way to see, well, actually that's not that much easier, and it has to do with the screen real estate and being able to get the font size big enough. But you can see there that I have 4 arc, and I'm going to go ahead and show that on the Finder, which is the equivalent of File Explorer, and you can see there that I have that here. So I have two folders that I had in there before. You can see here that I am at users, able, desktop, samples, and I have Cabin Fever, which is the application that we are going to use as a reference. You can always go to that, but we're going to go ahead and build it from scratch. And so here is the new empty folder for Arc, and I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop it into Visual Studio. And then I'm going to go ahead and hide this one. We don't need it anymore. And so as you can see, we have here a clean application. It's asking me if I want to trust it. I'll go ahead and say yes. And let's go back to the slides here. So we've set up our environment to be able to create a node application. We're going to go ahead and run node init to start. I'm going to go ahead and clear here. And so I will enter npm init. I am initializing this application. I'm going to go ahead and use the switch or the option for Y to simply create the initial metadata. I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and as you can see there, that has been created, and in a minute this should show up here. And I realized what I did. I was not inside of the folder for arc, so I'm going to go ahead and remove here package because I actually don't need it. And so I'm going to go ahead and move inside of 4arcs. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, npm init -y. And now I've created that metadata. If I list it here, you can see package.json. If I come over here, you can see that metadata as well. And so I have here the beginnings. Now I'm going to go ahead and change this to server, simply to follow the same naming convention that we did in class. And I'm going to go ahead and add that additional script. And what we're going to go ahead and add is this line here. And because I am in presentation mode, it did not let me select it, so I will go ahead and enter it by hand. I'm going to go ahead and enter start. And then I'm going to enter the command that I want to run. At the end of that, I'll have a comma simply to separate those two properties there. And I will enter node server.js. And so there I've gone ahead and created my metadata. At this point, it is just empty, right? We have no dependencies. We've added nothing to it. We've simply set it up so that in the future, when we want, we can run that script. So now let's go ahead and write some code. For this, I'm going to go ahead and exit the presentation environment simply to be able to select that code. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I know the font is tiny, but we'll go back to presentation mode in a minute. And so I'm going to go ahead and add one more file here. The file is going to be called server.js. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that code in. Go ahead and collapse that panel to be able to see better. And this is the server that we wrote in class. It returns a timestamp, and it will also echo to the console within the server. So now I'm going to go back here to presentation mode. Let me go ahead and start that up. And there we have it. We're back in presentation mode. Now we're going to go ahead and test it locally. Let's go ahead and just simply take a look at the listing of the files. You can see there that we have server. And so I'm going to go ahead and run node in server. And as you can see there, I have an error. And the reason for that is because I have not yet added the express dependency that I have that I'm using within my code. You can see here that's the very first line on my code. So I'm going to go ahead and add npm install express. Let's go ahead and run that. Now I'm going to go ahead and simply repeat node server. And you can see there that it is listening on port 3001. And now I'm going to go ahead and run here localhost 3001. And you can see there that I've hit it. If I go ahead and return, I'll hit it a few times more. Okay, so we've now gone through that first architecture, and we're going to go ahead and move to the cloud. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my server here. And I'm going to go ahead and upload all of the changes that I've made. So we're going to go ahead here and add to Git. Well, we're going to go ahead and check the status first, simply to verify that all of the changes that we made are flagged. You can see there that they are, so I'm going to go ahead and enter git add dot, then check the status again, make sure that those are ready to be added, and as you can see there they are. Now I'm going to go ahead and commit this and give myself a message. I'm going to go ahead and say first commit, and those have been now committed. Now I'm going to go ahead and use push, and that pushes the changes back up to the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to GitHub simply to show you that. And let's see, that should be, I call it for arc. And let's go ahead and scroll down. Let's go ahead and show the files, and you can see there that 23 seconds ago I pushed those files back up. This is our package.json. If we were to look at it, we'd see the code that we added, node server, we updated that to server.js, and that our server code, the one that returns the timestamp that is running on port 3001, is there. Now we're going to go ahead and move to the cloud, and for that I'm going to go ahead and open up full screen because the cloud application on the browser is a little bit big. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new browser tab here, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up full screen. So now that we're here in DigitalOcean, let's go ahead and create our machine. We'll start off by creating a droplet. Then we're going to go ahead and select from Marketplace. We want the type of virtual machine that can run Node applications. So I'm going to go ahead and enter Node, and you can see there that it comes up right away. We're then going to select, in general, go with the defaults with a few exceptions. We're going to go ahead and choose our lowest cost machine here. Then we're going to go ahead and choose the defaults once again. When we get down to data center region, we're going to go ahead and use New York 3. Go with the defaults. When it comes down to the authentication, in this case we're going to be generating a new SSH key. And I'm going to go ahead and click on new SSH key so you can see the type of instruction that you get. And we're going to use SSH key gen, which is a command that we can use to be able to generate these keys within our local environment. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this window. We'll go ahead and create it locally, and then we'll come back and paste it. So I'm going to go ahead and enter SSH key gen here. This will guide me through the steps. It is asking me for the path. I'm going to go ahead and enter users, able, then desktop, then the directory that we're working on, samples. You do not want to add it to the GitHub repo, which would be a logical place to put it just to keep everything together, because this gives you full access into that machine. Whatever you're adding into your GitHub repo, you're periodically replicating up onto the cloud, and those repos, like the one I have created, are often public, and so this is not a good place to put them. Let's go ahead and create it here at the samples directory, so one directory above the 4arc directory. It's asking me if I want to go ahead and override samples, and I do not want to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and say no. I'll go ahead and rewrite it again, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a name this time. So I'm going to go ahead and start again and enter users /able desktop, then samples. Then I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, and in this case I'm going to go ahead and call it the same thing as the application. And so actually in this case I should call it key, because otherwise it's going to collide with the folder that we already have. So I'll call it 4arc key, and it is asking me for a passphrase. I'm going to go ahead and say no, no again, and as you can see there, those have been created. If I were to list the things in that directory, you can see there that we have 4arc key, and then we have pub. Now what we need to be able to paste into that application is the pub key. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do that by entering cat 4arc key in this case, then pub for public. And so let's go ahead and enter that, and you can see there that that has been echoed into our command line. I'm going to go ahead and scroll here to make sure I get all of it. Then going to go ahead and copy that, bring back my browser window, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it on there. So make sure you get all of it. It's a little bit cramped there, so hopefully I got all of it. It looks like I did. And then I'm going to go ahead and simply call it here 4arc. This is just a way for me to remember when I look at my long list of keys what this key belongs to. So I'll go ahead and add the SSH key. So you can see there it is on the top. I'm now going to go ahead and create this, and I will call it nodo simply to remember what that is. And now I'm going to go ahead and create the droplet. Okay, now that that has been created, I'm going to go ahead and copy the IP. And now we're going to go ahead and start working on the blue window. Again, simply to keep it separate from what what we have locally. I know it can be a bit at times disconcerting exactly where you are working. In this case, we're going to make the connection between the blue window and DigitalOcean blue. So I'm going to go ahead here and move to the place where I have the key, right? So I need to move to the desktop, then to my samples directory. Here's where I have that key. And so now I'm going to go ahead and enter SSH-I, the key that we're going to be using, which in this case is for our key. There we go. Then we're going to go ahead and access that machine at the root, that is with the highest level of permissions. This is the user that is the one that will allow us to do that. Then I'm going to go ahead and copy here the IP. And let's see if we can go ahead and connect. And as you can see there, it is prompting me to give permission to this machine because we've never seen it before. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And that is being added. And as you can see there, we were successful in being able to connect to that machine. There's more information that's provided there for us, but that's just boilerplate. Right now we are at the prompt inside of that machine. You can see there it is root at nodo. Now we're going to go ahead and use GitHub, use Git to be able to pull that code that we created locally in our environment, but that now we have pushed into GitHub, and we'll go ahead and pull it back down here to DigitalOcean. To be able to do that, we need the address. I'm going to go ahead and make this window big here for a moment so I can go ahead and grab that address. Let me go ahead and expand a little bit more so I can see it. Here it is. I'm going to go ahead and grab the HTTPS. In this case, we're not connecting through SSH. We're going to be using HTTPS. I've gone ahead and copied it. Then going to go ahead and enter here git clone the address we just copied. And let's go ahead and take a look. And you can see there that we have for arc. I'm going to go ahead and move into for arc. We're now inside of it. We can see our code that we wrote previously. I'm going to go ahead and enter npm install to go ahead and add that package that we need, which is Express. And then if you remember from class, we need to go ahead and open up that port. So if we go back to our slides, you can see there that the command is UFW, that's the default firewall, allow port 3001. We can go ahead and take a look at the status to confirm that that port is open, and you can see there that it is. So now we have our application, we've opened up our port, we pulled our code from GitHub into this new virtual machine that can run Node applications. So we're going to go ahead and run here our code. So let's go ahead and run it. And as you can see there, it is listening on port 3001. Now we can go to our local environment and enter this new IP. And the IP, I'm going to go ahead and copy it from the address that I have there is 164.90. You see it's a little bit hard to see because the font is tiny. 131.162. So let's go ahead and hit return, and you can see there that my browser is complaining that this could be a dangerous site, and the reason for that is because this is not HTTPS, but we can go ahead and bypass it. So we can go ahead and take a look at the details, visit this unsafe site, and as you can see there, we've gone ahead and hit that address. So we could hit it a few more times, and you can see there in DigitalOcean on that console. We can see the hits that are coming in from this browser that is in our local environment, but really could be anywhere. And so now that we've done that second architecture, I'm going to go ahead and stop that machine. I'm going to go back to the console and I'll go ahead and delete this machine. We don't need it anymore. I'm going to go ahead and destroy it. And as you can see, that takes effect right away. That machine has been destroyed. I'm going to go ahead and collapse that, minimize it, and we're going to go back to our slides here. So I'm going to go ahead here and exit from it. Actually, it won't work because that machine has been deleted. So in a few minutes, that'll time out and it'll come back to the local prompt. So we went ahead and ran in the cloud. And the next thing that we want to do now is that we want to Dockerize. That is, we want to be able to create first a Docker file, then a Docker image, then from that a Docker container. We'll first verify that locally, and then we will do the same thing on the cloud. So we will start off here by doing a bit of cleanup. I'm going to go ahead and clean, meaning delete all of my containers. This is a pretty dangerous command to run. This is why I have danger. Only do it if you want to delete everything, but be very careful. If you have anything else that you're doing from homework, this would delete that as well. So only if you're 100% sure that you want to be able to remove all of your containers, everything that you have, should you run this. In my case, this is perfectly fine. I know exactly what I have. I know I want to get rid of everything. And so it is asking me to confirm that I want to delete everything, and I have now done so. So if I were to open up my Docker console, you would see that I do not have anything because I have deleted everything. No containers, no images, nothing. And so next we're going to go ahead and create here a new Docker file. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my panel here, enter Docker file, hit return. I'm going to go ahead and collapse. I'm going to ignore the automation that Visual Studio will provide. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And as you can see here, the very first line is making a reference to a very lightweight node environment. If you were to navigate to Docker Hub and read about the node containers that are defined there and which ones are available that we can use as a building layer within the container that we're trying to build, our Docker file definition that we're trying to do, you see there that node Alpine is one of the lightest weights that you can have. And so I'm going to go ahead and use that, and that's where you would get information as to what you want to use. Then I'm going to go ahead and simply add information that I am the maintainer for this specific application. I'm going to then define a working directory. This is going to be a working directory inside of that container. And then we're going to move to the simple task of copying over things into this container. We're going to copy over our server file, then our package.json. Then we're going to run npm install. And as you can see there, we're placing everything inside of that app directory. Then we're going to expose our port 3001. And at the very end, we're going to run npm start. npm start, it's that script that we wrote. If I go back here to the metadata and package.json, you can see here that it refers to that line. And that is simply a convenient way to be able to run the application. So I'm going to go ahead and go back here, and I'm going to go ahead and save this file. So now we have a Docker container. So we've taken care of that step. Now we're going to go ahead and create, and I'm escaping from presentation mode simply to be able to grab that line of code. We're going to go ahead and enter that here, but I need to move back into the application, which is for Arc. And let's confirm that we're in the right place. Yes. And now I'm going to go ahead and enter the command. And as you can see there, I was carrying the $, the shell prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and enter it again, and this time you can see there that that Docker image is being built. And in a second, if I list my Docker images, you should be able to see it, and you can see there that it is. This is Able Sun Cabin Fever, right? This is the name that I have given it, which is, by the way, my Docker username, Able Sanchez, well, Able Sun, and then / Cabin Fever, which is the tag that I am giving it. I'm now going to go ahead and verify that image. I want to make sure that it works before I push it up to Docker Hub. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that there. I'm going to go ahead and hit return. And this is now a Dockerize application. That is, I'm running a Docker container. Inside of it, I have my Node.js and NPM packages. You can see there that it's listening in port 3001. I'm going to go ahead and enter here localhost 3001, and when I hit return, you can see there that the server is getting hit and that I am getting what I expected to see on the browser. So now that we have confirmed that, we're going to go ahead and push to Docker Hub. Let me go ahead and go back to presenter view here so you can see it better. And we're simply going to push that image that we have created, that we have right now locally. We're going to go ahead and push it to Docker Hub. We want to do that so that later, when we look at the fourth architecture, we can pull it in the cloud. So we've gone ahead and done that. I'm going to go ahead here and finish or close that Docker container that is running. And we're going to go ahead and run our publish. And you can see here that it's Docker push Able Sun, and the name of my image is Cabin Fever. And so I'm going to go ahead and push that. And this works, by the way, because I am running my Docker application and I am logged in already with the right credentials. So within the terminal environment, that identity is known, and this is what the Docker application does. And so I can push directly onto my space within Docker Hub. As you can see here, we can go ahead and navigate to that address. I'm going to go ahead and grab that and paste it in the browser. And if we go ahead and take a look when this was last updated, you can see here that Able updated it a few seconds ago. So nice and fresh image that we have just pushed up. So that takes us to the end of that third architecture. We're now going to go ahead and move to the cloud and run that image that we just created within a machine inside of the cloud in DigitalOcean. So let's go ahead and move on to that. We're going to go ahead and go back to DigitalOcean. We're going to go ahead and create a new droplet. We're then going to go ahead, once that comes up, and select an image. This is a virtual machine image, not a Docker image. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and select Docker. You can see there that is one of the featured recommendations. We're going to go ahead then and select low-cost machine, again, a $5 machine. You only get billed by the time that you run it, so each time we run one of these is cents at the most. And so we're going to go ahead and go with New York 3 once again. We're going to go ahead and scroll down. We're going to go ahead and select our 4-arc key. Once again, this is the key that we used for our previous machine that we created. We're now going to use it in this case as well. And simply to review, once again, we're using the Docker image selected over here. We're choosing the basic plan. We went with the lowest cost machine. We use data center region 3. We selected our key, SSH key, as 4-arc. Everything else that I did not mention, we chose the default. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and name it Docko. This will be the name of that machine. and then I'm going to go ahead and create it. As you can see there, that has completed. I'm going to go ahead and copy the IP, and I'm going to go back to our environment. We're going to go ahead here and clear. We'll go ahead and enter SSH-I. In this case, our key that we're using is called /arc. Then root and the IP that we're accessing. This is the one I just copied from that brand new virtual machine that we created. I'm going to go ahead and return. It'll ask me if I trust this machine. I'll say yes. And permissions denied. Okay, let me see. Make sure I am in the right place. Let's clear, list my files. Oh, I didn't enter arc key. So let me go ahead and go back here, and this is key. And as you can see there, we're now at the console. You can see root doco. And so we are inside of this brand new machine that we have created. In this case, if we go back to our slides, and let me go ahead and make these bigger so we can see them, we're going to go ahead and run through the entire cycle again. We will have to open up that port. But the very first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to go ahead and pull that image. We'll go ahead and run docker pull, so instead of push as we did before from our environment, in this case we are pulling. So able sun cabin fever, and this, by the way, could be pulled by anyone, right? This new brand new machine knows nothing about me. It has no information about my credentials. The only thing I created was a credential to be able to access it, but anybody would be able to recreate this, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that image. You can see there that that is done. Now I'm going to go ahead and run that instance. Actually, but right before I do, I need to go ahead and open up that port. So I'm going to enter here the command for that. Allow 3001. Let's go ahead and check the status. You can see there that that is open. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the long command to be able to run and expose that port. And we'll go ahead and hit return, and you can see there that that is now listening. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the IP. Let's see. Here it is. I am copying it. And I'm going to go ahead and enter that on this path. And as you can see there, the server was hit. If I were to make this a little bit bigger so we could see it better, you'd be able to see there the hits being made. So we have gone through all of those architectures. We went ahead and moved through all of those stacks. We started out very simply in our local environment, creating a node application with some npm packages. We then went to the cloud, used a virtual machine that allowed us to run a node application. This is a machine that was tailor-made for node applications. It couldn't run Python, it couldn't run Java or something else. Now we came back to our local environment and created an image. We then pushed that image, a Docker image, and we pushed that image onto Docker Hub. And then we went to Docker Hub and created a virtual machine that can run Docker images. That means that machine can run Python, it can run Java, it can run databases, it can run anything that is a Docker image. And as mentioned before, Docker really is the abstraction to be able to run things and for portability. And so in this case, we we created the image, and then we were able simply to pull it in the cloud environment and to be able to run that Node npm application. So make sure you can go through these. The only other thing that I would add is that we went ahead and created SSH keys. We use SSH keygen, which is available at your shell if you are on a Mac. If you are on Windows and you install the Git Bash environment, you will be able to do the same thing as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and close and see you next class.